Today we're going to be talking about basic materials inside of 3ds Max and the multiple ways that we can create materials and apply them. In order to open the material editor, we have a couple of ways to do that. We can either hit M on the keyboard, for M for material. And here we see the Slate Material Editor. By default, 3ds Max is going to open up into the Slate Material Editor. Or if we want to on our toolbar, we can come up to our Material Editor. If we click on that, it will do the same thing. So here we have the Slate Material Editor, which is relatively new. Before, 3ds Max used what's called the Compact Material Editor, and we will get into that. But first, let's talk about making some materials inside of our Slate Material Editor. One of the first things we want to do is try to determine what type of material we want to create. So for this, a basic material, we're just going to click on Standard, which is a standard material. We'll double click, and we'll see that our standard material will come into our view, and we know it's a standard view because it tells us standard view. If we click on multi-sub object, for example, because we wanted to create a multi-sub object, we can see that it is multi-sub because it shows inside of our viewport. If we can't see everything quite as clear as we want, we can come down to the lower right until our cutaway edge turns into an edge, and we can click and drag. So inside of our material editor, we have several different tabs: ambient color, diffuse color, specular color. Each one of these represents a part of our material. Our diffuse color, for example, is the color of our object. If we wanted it to be, say, red, then we could double click on diffuse color, click on diffuse, make it red, click OK, and then we can see our material in our preview is red. If we didn't want to use a color, if we have our own custom texture, then we can right click in our view, and let's say ours is a map. Then let's go to maps and say bitmap, and then we'll come to just a picture that we have saved on our computer somewhere. Let's say this one. No idea what it is. Looks like it's the body of a person. We'll click OK. And then we have these circles. In these circles, we can click, hold our left mouse button, and we see a red wire come out. We can attach it to any one of these that we want to. But we want ours to be in the diffuse color because that's what we were talking about. So if we let go, we'll now see that our bitmap is driving our diffuse color. The same if we wanted to do a bump, which we'll get into that later. We'll double click on, we can click on our materials, and we want to do, well, really we want a normal bump because we're going to change ours from a normal bump into our bump. And then we'll choose material bitmap. And these blue looking ones, blue and purples, these are our bump maps. So let's click one. Then we have that map. We can put that into our normal bump. And you may not be able to see it in our preview, but our bump map, or our normal map, going through our normal map channel into our bump map, is now creating a bump for our material. We can do the same thing with opacity and self-illumination and all sorts of things. And since this is just a basic preview of materials, we're not going to get too heavy into it. But now that we have this made, let's see about applying it to a material, or to a shape rather, or an object. So if I click on my material, and I have my shape selected already, up at the top I have 1, 2, 3, 4 over, assign material to selection. So I can click that. And I also want to make sure that it is show shaded material in viewport. And now we see that material we had is on our shape. So let's look at the other way that we can do the same thing. Instead of using the Slate Material Editor, let's go to Mode. Left click on Mode and go to Compact Material Editor. And here is my compact material. I can do the same thing. I'm going to select a texture, and I believe by default yours will have only 6. So we can go to Options, Cycle, 3x2, 5x3, and 6x4. And let's do that 6x4 option. I'm going to select an object, or a material rather. And the diffuse was the same thing that we did with our color, which just to show you that it works the same, we're just going to change that color. And you can see our material preview is the same as it was when we were doing the slate material editor. And the maps that we right clicked on and put together, we have the same thing here in maps. So that diffuse color, I'm going to choose none and go to my bitmap like I did before. And I believe it was this one here. We'll open that. And now we can see that material has changed. And this one, I'm still in my bitmap that I was looking at before. So I'm going to go back up to my parent, which will take me to the top level of my material. And then here we were looking at bump. There is another thing that we need to do though. When you're using a normal map, let's change this to 100. And none, we'll click on the normal bump like we did before. And instead of having to create the normal map and use that red wire to connect them, we're just going to go to normal. We'll click on bitmap, and I believe we'll use this one, why not? Okay, and now we have the same material, and I can assign it the same way. So I select an object. I can assign material to selection and then show it, or I can just click and drag. And we have that same material. So what I would suggest is to play around with both the slate material editor and the compact material editor. There are a lot of things that we haven't gone over, but we did go over the basics of creating a material and applying a material. So play around with that. And until then, I hope you have a whole lot of fun.